What's up, gearheads? Today we're diving deep into the vault of automotive insanity to uncover 10 of the rarest, most bizarre, and downright questionable RVs and motorhomes ever created. We're talking about rolling palaces that cost more than small countries, experimental prototypes that defied physics, and design choices that make you wonder if the engineers were sampling the merchandise from Woodstock. These aren't your typical Winnebago weekend warriors. Oh no, these are the unicorns of the RV world. From nuclear-powered concepts to luxury coaches that came with their own servants' quarters, buckle up, because we're about to explore the wild west of recreational vehicle engineering. Number 10. The 1976 Travco 270, the Space Cruiser. Let's kick things off with something that looks like it escaped from a 1970s sci-fi movie set. The Travco 270 wasn't just an RV, it was a rolling statement that screamed, "I have arrived and I brought my own space program." Built by Travco Manufacturing in Ohio, this 27-foot beast was the Cadillac of motorhomes during the height of America's love affair with all things space age. We're talking about the era when NASA was still fresh, Star Trek was influencing everything from architecture to toaster design, and somehow some brilliant madman decided that what the world really needed was a motorhome that looked like it could dock with the International Space Station. The Space Cruiser featured a completely integrated fiberglass body, no seams, no joints, just one smooth aerodynamic shell that was supposedly inspired by aircraft design. The interior was pure 1970s luxury, shag carpeting in colors that don't exist in nature, a full galley with avocado green appliances, and seating that could double as a conversation pit at your local swingers club. But here's where it gets interesting. Travco only made about 200 of these things before the company went belly up in 1979. Why? Well, turns out that building what essentially amounts to a fiberglass spaceship is expensive, and the fuel crisis of the late 70s made people think twice about driving something that got as many miles per gallon as a small aircraft carrier. Today, finding a Travco 270 in decent condition is like finding a unicorn that's also a licensed contractor. Theoretically possible, but you're probably better off buying lottery tickets. Number 9. The 1975 GMC Motorhome, the Rotunda. Oh, you thought the Travco was weird? Hold my beer. The GMC motorhome, specifically the ultra-rare Rotunda variant, was what happened when GM's engineers got together and decided that traditional RV design was for quitters. First off, this thing was front-wheel drive in 1975, when most cars weren't even front-wheel drive yet. GM basically took the drivetrain from their Oldsmobile Tornado, stretched it out, and stuffed it into a motorhome that looked like it was designed by someone who'd spent way too much time staring at Airstream trailers under the influence of premium unleaded fumes. The Rotunda was the top-of-the-line model, and when I say top of the line, I mean it came with features that wouldn't look out of place in a luxury yacht. We're talking about a full-size washer and dryer, a wet bar that would make Don Draper jealous, and get this, a rotating dining area that could transform into a double bed with a push of a button, hence the name Rotunda. The whole thing was built on an aluminum space frame with fiberglass body panels, making it lighter than traditional RVs, but also making repairs about as straightforward as performing surgery on a spacecraft. The 455 cubic inch V8 was mounted backwards because why make anything simple? And the whole setup was so advanced that most RV repair shops just stared at it like cavemen looking at an iPhone. GM only made these motorhomes from 1973 to 1978, and the Rotunda variants were so rare that most people aren't even sure how many were actually built. Some say 50, some say 200, and some say the whole thing was just an elaborate prank by GM's design team. What we do know is that finding one today is like finding a needle in a haystack if the needle was also a luxury motorhome and the haystack was the entire continental United States. Number 8. the 1979 Newell coach, the Executive. Now we're getting into the realm of I have more money than sense, and I want everyone to know it. The 1979 Newell Coach Executive wasn't just an RV, it was a rolling middle finger to the concept of reasonable spending. Newell has been building custom coaches since the 1960s, but the Executive was their answer to the question, what if we built an RV for people who think regular luxury cars are too pedestrian? Each one was hand-built in Miami, Oklahoma. And yes, I said Miami, Oklahoma, because apparently even the town name had delusions of grandeur. These weren't mass-produced units rolling off an assembly line. Oh no. Each Executive took about 6 months to build, and the waiting list was longer than the line for the latest iPhone. We're talking about coaches that cost more than most people's houses in $1979, which means they were absurdly expensive by any standard. The Executive came with features that would make a Vegas penthouse jealous, custom woodwork that probably required its own environmental impact study, leather seating that came from cows that live better lives than most humans, and a sound system that could probably violate several noise ordinances. But here's the really crazy part. Each one was essentially a prototype. No two Executives were exactly alike because wealthy customers kept requesting modifications. Can you add a wine cellar? Sure! How about a small helicopter pad? Why not? Is it possible to install a putting green? Challenge accepted. The result was a series of one-off luxury coaches that were more like rolling mansions than recreational vehicles. Finding two identical Executives is impossible because they simply don't exist. It's like collecting snowflakes if snowflakes cost $500,000 and came with their own zip code. Number 7. The 1974 Condor motorhome, the Land Yacht. Buckle up, because we're about to talk about what happens when boat builders decide they want to try their hand at land vehicles. The Condor Land Yacht was the brainchild of some absolute madman who looked at traditional RVs and said, you know what these need? More yacht. Built by a small company in California, because of course it was California, the Condor was constructed using actual marine engineering principles. We're talking about a fiberglass hull that was designed to handle ocean swells, applied to something that would never see anything rougher than a Walmart parking lot. The interior was pure nautical luxury. Teak wood paneling, brass fixtures, porthole windows, and seating that looked like it belonged on a millionaire's fishing boat. The galley was laid out like a ship's kitchen, complete with gimbal-mounted appliances that could theoretically stay level even if you were driving through an earthquake. But here's where it gets really interesting. The Condor came with an optional captain's bridge that was essentially a flying bridge setup from a motor yacht installed on the roof of the RV. You could literally drive this thing from an elevated platform while your passengers lounged in air-conditioned comfort below. It was like being the captain of your own land ship if your ship got stuck in traffic and needed to stop for gas every 200 miles. Number 6. The 1978 Bluebird Wanderlodge, the Entertainer. Now we're talking about the ride of choice for rock stars, country music legends, and anyone else who needed to travel in style while maintaining their reputation for excessive lifestyle choices. The Bluebird Wanderlodge Entertainer wasn't just an RV, it was a rolling concert venue. Bluebird had been building buses since the 1920s, so when they decided to get into the luxury RV game, they didn't mess around. The Entertainer was their top-of-the-line model, and it was basically a Greyhound bus that had been sent to finishing school and came back with delusions of grandeur. We're talking about a 40-foot aluminum palace with features that would make a Vegas hotel suite jealous. Full-size kitchen, multiple sleeping areas, a lounge that could seat a small army, and, this is the kicker, a built-in sound system that could probably be heard from space. The thing came with its own recording studio capabilities, because apparently, inspiration doesn't wait for convenient studio booking times. But here's what made the Entertainer truly rare. Bluebird would customize each one to the owner's specific requirements. Want a hot tub? Done. Need a helicopter landing pad? Sure. How about a full bar with a mechanical bull? Why the hell not? The result was that no two entertainers were alike, and tracking down specific units today is like playing archaeological detective. The real tragedy is that many of these rolling palaces were literally driven into the ground by their famous owners. Rock stars aren't exactly known for their vehicle maintenance schedules. And when your tour bus doubles as your primary residence and your party venue, things tend to wear out faster than a drummer and a speed metal band. Number 5. The 1977 Airstream Argosy, the Silver Bullet Deluxe. You know Airstream, those iconic silver trailers that look like they were designed by aliens with really good taste in aerodynamics? But the Argosy was Airstream's attempt to break into the motorhome market, and it was about as successful as a chocolate teapot. The Argosy motorhome took everything that made Airstream trailers iconic: the aluminum construction, the distinctive riveted exterior, the aerodynamic design, and tried to apply it to a self-propelled vehicle. The result was something that looked like a silver suppository on wheels, and I mean that in the most loving way possible. The Silver Bullet Deluxe was the top trim level, and it came with features that were genuinely ahead of their time. All aluminum construction made it lighter than comparable motorhomes, and the aerodynamic design meant it actually got decent fuel economy, a big deal during the late 70s fuel crisis. Inside, it was classic Airstream. Everything built with aircraft-quality precision, compact design that maximized every square inch of space, and fixtures that were built to survive nuclear war. The galley folded out from the wall like something from a space station. The seating converted into beds with engineering precision, and the whole interior had that distinctive Airstream feel that was part luxury yacht, part lunar module. So why is it so rare? Well, turns out that people who wanted Airstream quality and design were perfectly happy with trailers they could tow behind their existing vehicles. The motorhome market was dominated by companies that built big, imposing coaches, not sleek silver bullets that looked like they belonged in a 1950s vision of the future. Airstream made the Argosy motorhomes for only a few years in the late 70s before admitting defeat and going back to what they did best, building trailers that looked like they could double as escape pods. Today, finding an Argosy motorhome is like finding a unicorn that's also a licensed pilot. Number 4. The 1976 Revcon Trailblazer, the Glass House. Hold on to your hats because we're about to discuss what happens when someone decides that traditional RV windows are for cowards. The Revcon Trailblazer was essentially a greenhouse on wheels. And I'm not being metaphorical here. Revcon was a small company that specialized in converting van chassis into luxury motorhomes, but the Trailblazer was their magnum opus of questionable design decisions. The entire thing was basically one giant window from front to back, floor to ceiling. We're talking about panoramic glass panels that wrapped around the entire vehicle, giving passengers 360-degree views of everything around them. The idea was brilliant in theory: maximum visibility, connection with nature, and an interior that felt more like a luxury observation deck than a traditional RV. The execution? Well, let's just say that there's a reason most buildings have walls. The interior was laid out like a luxury lounge with seating arranged to take advantage of all that glass. The galley was minimal. Apparently, the designers figured that when you're living in a fishbowl, you don't spend much time cooking. The sleeping area was in the rear, and yes, it had windows too. Because privacy is overrated when you're trying to make a statement about modern living. But here's the problem with building a motorhome that's basically a terrarium. Glass doesn't insulate well. Condensation is a constant problem, and driving something that resembles a mobile aquarium gets old fast when you realize that everyone can see exactly what you're doing inside. Revcon made maybe 50 of these glass houses before realizing that most people actually prefer some privacy when they're living in their vehicles. The few surviving Trailblazers are now museum pieces, mainly because nobody can figure out how to replace all that custom glass when it inevitably breaks. Number 3. The 1975 Ultravan, the Corvair camper. Oh boy. Oh boy. We need to talk about what happens when someone looks at a Corvair, you know, the car that Ralph Nader called unsafe at any speed, and thinks, you know what this needs? To be bigger and carry an entire family's worth of camping gear. The Ultravan was the brainchild of some absolute madman who took Corvair running gear, stretched it out, and built what was essentially a camper van that looked like it had been designed by someone who'd never actually seen a camper van before. The result was something that looked like a loaf of bread and a spacecraft, and handled about as well as you'd expect from something built on Corvair engineering. Here's the thing, the Ultravan was actually ingenious in some ways. It was front-wheel drive at a time when most RVs were rear-wheel drive, it had a low floor plan because the engine was in the back, and it was surprisingly spacious inside for something that looked like it had been compressed by a giant vise. But, and this is a big but, it was built on Corvair mechanicals, the same Corvair that had a reputation for sudden oversteer, swing axle suspension that could kill you if you looked at it wrong, and an air-cooled engine that was about as reliable as a politician's promise. Now imagine all of those characteristics, but in a vehicle that's taller, heavier, and carrying your entire family plus camping gear. The Ultravan company made about 370 of these rolling death traps between 1961 and 1970, and the fact that any of them survived is a testament to either divine intervention or the fact that most owners were too terrified to actually drive them anywhere. The few that remain are cherished by collectors who have a deep appreciation for automotive insanity. The irony is that the Ultravan was actually ahead of its time in many ways. If they'd built it on literally any other platform, Ford, Dodge, even a riding lawnmower, it might have been successful. Instead, they chose the Corvair. Number 2. The 1979 FMC 2900R, the Nuclear Option. We're now entering the realm of completely insane engineering decisions, and the FMC 2900R was the Mount Everest of questionable RV design. FMC, Food Machinery Corporation, was a company that normally built things like tanks and military equipment, so when they decided to get into the RV business, subtlety wasn't exactly their strong suit. The 2900R was their attempt to build the ultimate luxury motorhome. And by ultimate, I mean they literally considered using nuclear power. I'm not joking. During the development phase, FMC engineers seriously explored the possibility of using a small nuclear reactor to power the vehicle's electrical systems. The idea was eventually scrapped when someone pointed out that the licensing requirements alone would take longer than the heat death of the universe. Instead, they settled for conventional power, but everything else about the 2900R was still completely insane. We're talking about a 29-foot motorhome that weighed more than most commercial trucks, with construction that looked like it was designed to survive a direct nuclear hit. The body was built using aircraft construction techniques, with an aluminum space frame that was probably strong enough to serve as a bridge. The interior was pure 1970s excess. Multiple levels connected by a spiral staircase, a master suite that was bigger than most studio apartments, and amenities that included things like a built-in vacuum system, central air conditioning that could cool a small office building, and a galley that looked like it belonged in a luxury restaurant. But here's the kicker. The whole thing was powered by a turbine engine. Not a diesel engine, not a gas engine, an actual turbine engine that was basically a jet engine modified for ground use. The result was something that could probably achieve takeoff velocity if you could find a long enough runway, but got about as many miles per gallon as a small aircraft. FMC made exactly 26 of these things before someone in accounting pointed out that they were losing money on every single unit. The few surviving 2900Rs are now museum pieces, mainly because nobody can afford to put fuel in them. Number 1. The 1973 Cortez Motors Sky Lounge, the flying RV. And now for the absolute pinnacle of RV insanity. We have arrived at the Cortez Motors Sky Lounge, an RV that wasn't content to just drive on roads. This magnificent bastard of engineering wanted to fly. Stop laughing. I'm serious. The Sky Lounge was the brainchild of Cortez Motors, a small company in California that looked at the RV market and decided what it really needed was more aviation. The basic concept was sound. Build a luxury motorhome that could also function as an aircraft. The execution was, well, let's just say that the laws of physics are more like strongly worded suggestions to some people. The Sky Lounge was built on a heavily modified truck chassis, but that's where conventional thinking ended. The body was constructed using aircraft-grade aluminum and designed with aerodynamic principles that would allow it to theoretically achieve flight. The wings were retractable and stored along the sides of the vehicle during ground travel. When you arrived at your destination, you could extend the wings, fire up the aircraft engines, and literally fly away. The interior was designed to function both as a luxury RV and as an aircraft cabin. The cockpit was in the front, naturally, with full flight instrumentation and controls. Behind that was a passenger compartment that could seat 6 in airline-style seating, and behind that was a luxury living area complete with galley, sleeping quarters, and even a small bathroom. Here's where it gets really interesting. Cortez actually built 3 prototypes, and one of them actually flew. Sort of. The test flight lasted about 30 seconds and ended with what the company diplomatically called an unscheduled landing in a nearby farmer's field. Nobody was seriously injured, but the farmer spent the next decade telling people about the day a flying RV crashed in his cornfield. The FAA took one look at the whole concept and buried it under so much paperwork that archaeologists are still trying to dig it out. The remaining prototypes were eventually sold off, with one ending up in a private collection, where it sits as a monument to the kind of ambitious thinking that makes America great and also occasionally results in spectacular failures. The Sky Lounge represented everything that was amazing and terrible about 1970s engineering: unlimited optimism, complete disregard for practical limitations, and the kind of can-do attitude that built the space program and also gave us pet rocks. It was an idea so crazy it might have actually worked, if physics and common sense hadn't gotten in the way.